Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Excellent. So I've had a very wonderful day today. I've done absolutely nothing, achieved nothing. So I've at last managed to spend a whole day without achieving something. That's an achievement by itself. Because so many people, they spend their life always trying to get somewhere. And when you get to where you want to be, you realize you wish you'd have been back to where you started from. It was much better. We always want to change things. There was this old story I read a long time ago, these are old Dhammaloka stories, of this farmer who had lots of rotten hay. It had gone mouldy. And being someone who didn't want to waste any money or any resources whatsoever, he just wanted his cows to eat the mouldy hay. It was still good nutrition, it just didn't taste nice. So he put the mouldy hay in the field, and of course the cows refused to eat that hay. So he decided to mix it up with good hay. So he spent a lot of time mixing up the good hay with the mouldy hay, put it in the paddock, and the next day he found the cows had very carefully, with their noses, separated out the good hay from the mouldy hay, eaten all the good hay and left the mouldy hay. Though still was left with all this mouldy hay. And then he had this brainwave, what we call insight. He noticed that many cows, and you've probably seen this if you've lived in the countryside, many cows had poked their head through the fence as far as they could go to eat the grass just beyond the fence. So that's what he did. He put the mouldy hay outside the paddock, not too far away, just with a bit of a stretch, a cow could reach it. And so the mouldy hay was just put a couple of feet outside the fence, and by the next morning it was all gone. Which just shows you what we can't get, what's outside of what's allowed, is always the most delicious. And it's just the same, that why we keep thinking that if we get somewhere, if we do something, if we change something, then it's going to be better. It's just an old mouldy hay thing. The grass in your own paddock is never good enough, but just, I change this, I go there, I do this, and it's always much, much, much better. And that's what drives our life, always going places, doing stuff, trying to make it better. And it just makes us so busy in our life. And of course that busyness becomes an addiction, and that addiction drives us every day. We can't stop. We always have to do something. Always have to achieve something. Even when we have nothing to do, when we're on retreat, we have to get our meditation better. We've got to improve stuff. Learn a bit of Pali. Learn the Patimokkha. Do something. And okay, yeah, it's good to do those things, but it's even better to spend a whole day doing nothing. And I don't mean fantasizing, dreaming, sleeping and messing around. I mean just sitting there with absolutely nothing to do and being content where you are. Because you can obviously understand that all that doing stuff all comes from a lack of contentment. And a lack of contentment all comes from a lack of wisdom, thinking that the grass on the other side of the fence is somehow sweeter, that sometimes you need to improve yourself, that somehow or other, that if you practice hard, that you're going to get something which is amazing and wonderful. Not realizing it's that very striving and yearning and wanting and craving and reaching out for stuff. That is the cause of the problem. So if you can only just let that go. The great Buddhist teaching, let it go. Just put it down. Stop messing around with stuff. And then if you let it go, you find you don't need much to be content. You got your hut in the forest. You've got your food at breakfast, at lunch. I don't know about Dharmasara, but it's amazing the food we've been getting here over our rains retreat. Beautiful food, nice hut, few little teachings every now and again. What more do you want in life? This is it. This is paradise. This is the Tusita heaven. This is just as best you can get. So just sit down, relax, and don't want anything more. And it's an amazing thing that when you want something, the mind gets so restless you can't sit very long at all. When you don't want anything, the mind just sits down for hours. Why? Because it's content. It is that wanting which keeps on driving us off the meditation cushion to walking, off the walking to making a cup of tea, off of making a cup of tea for doing something else, always driving us doing whatever. And instead, to learn about how to be content. Because it's okay, I keep on pushing to get these deep meditations, get the jhanas, become a streaming and become an arahat, get psychic powers. That'd be wonderful if anyone got psychic powers one day. But in the meantime, just learn how to be content. Just happy to be here in every moment. And the nice thing about contentment, it doesn't matter what the situation is around you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be sort of comfortable. You can be sick. You can just be hot. You can be cold. You can just have not enough food or too much food, which is more likely in this place. But whatever it is, you can be content anywhere, with anything. And that's a great training, learning how to be content no matter what is happening around you or in your body, just to be happy to be here, opening the door of your heart to this moment. Just simple teachings. Sometimes people think those teachings, open the door of your heart, is just for lay people, just for worldly stuff, but that is straight down the line, powerful, deep teachings. Open the door of your heart to this moment. Just let it be, with kindness, appreciation. Somehow or other it's teaching you something. So don't try and get rid of it. Embrace it, accept it, be with it, care for it. Don't try and cure it, care for it. And these are fantastic teachings which you do apply in all sorts of other places, but it's also great for your meditation. Because when you're content, the mind becomes peaceful and still. And contentment, it doesn't have to be just when everybody is perfect and wonderful, the weather's nice, the heart is beautiful. When you get enough free time, you don't have to worry about roads and contractors and paying bills and all this other stuff. Sometimes I look at myself and say, poor Ajahn Brahm, why do I have to give all these talks and talk to all these people after lunch? Why me? But I say, no, I'm content to do this. Just because I'm content to do this, don't think I like to do it. Just content, just do what you have to do. And just don't even think twice about it. That's the most important thing, not thinking twice about it. Because I've always found out that when I try and control my life, people think if you're the boss, if you're a manager, if you're a leader, you've got more control. But most people have told me that when you're in positions of leadership, you actually have less control. You're just trying to please other people, trying to look after others. So there's less wiggle room for your own personal wants and needs and desires. You actually need to be more content. So this is how you practice, just to be content. If I try and control my life, it always goes wrong. You always get stressed out. And this is usually what happens if you try and control, demand, have all these shoulds. This monk should be like that. The nun should be like this. The food should be like that. That is when we call it control freak. And it's quite the opposite of what we're talking about being a monk, being a letting go freak. Just be someone who's really content and peaceful. And if you don't control, then you don't tend to get angry. One of those old stories, this is from the Zen tradition, for those of you who don't know this story. Again, I usually tell this at Nolamara, but it comes up because someone wrote on a piece of paper, how can I not vent my anger when someone really does something wrong and mistreats me? And this is one of the stories which really impressed me. When I first read it, I think as a lay person. It was an old Zen story about this monk, a very good monk. I think it was Hakuin. This very good monk was meditating up in a mountain, really peaceful, didn't ask for much, would go on arms round in the local village. They would support him. They were really respectful of him. But they weren't that interested in the Dhamma, they just wanted to feed him and just every now and again ask questions. And it happened that in the village there was a young girl and a young boy who fell in love, and one thing led to another, and they slept together and she got pregnant. And as soon as she got pregnant, the boyfriend was off. He ran away to the city. He didn't want to sort of take responsibility for this and get into big trouble, as you would in those days. So this little girl, she was getting a bit plump around the waist, and they soon found out she was pregnant. So the father was very upset and demanded to know from his daughter, who is the culprit? Who did this? What boy did this? And even though the boy had ran away, she still loved him and didn't want him to get him into trouble. So he said, I can't tell my father it was this boy. He'd really get into trouble that way. I've got to think of somebody else. Who else can I think of? Who else can I blame? And the thought came into her head, the monk. So she told her husband, the monk up in the mountain, you know, he did this. He's responsible. He's the father. And the father was really upset this time. So he went straight to the headman of the village, and they called a big meeting. And they were so upset that a monk could do that thing. So all of them, they went up from the village hall in a big procession to see this monk. And then they just accused him of just breaking his precepts and making a young girl pregnant and being a bad monk and being a terrible example, and they were criticizing him, and they were really giving him a hard time, which he didn't deserve at all. He was totally innocent. And what did he do? Did he get angry at them? No. Did he try and defend himself? It was a waste of time. They'd already decided he was guilty. So all he said apparently was, arsehole. I always remember that when they said that in the talk, because I misheard it first of all. I said, no, it wasn't that. Ajahn, it was arsehole. So anyway, after they berated him, they left him and just, he was meditating. Didn't affect him at all. That's a real monk, just content. These things happen in life. And of course, so when she gave birth, they took the baby and they decided they wanted to punish him, give him some penance. You're responsible for this. So all the villagers, they went up for the second time to this monk, and they gave him this baby girl it was. Here, it's your problem. You did this. You look after her. And it's a monk. I mean, just, sometimes, I don't know if you know this, Ajahn Venbhasapanya, but sometimes people offer me babies. It's just part of the tradition, especially the Thai tradition. If you give birth, you offer it to a monk Just like, offer sangadana, offer a bag of rice, or whatever. It's like that. And the idea is that the monk accepts it, and that becomes like the godfather, like the monk father. And so, you look after it. The connection's been made there. And then afterwards, after they've offered it to me, then I offer it back to the family to look after, So you look after it for later on. But, it really belongs to me now. So it just makes that little connection. And of course, if ever that happens, you can't get rid of the kid quick enough because they've offered it to you. But, please, it's only for 5 minutes, okay? Take it away. Because I don't know how to look after a baby. Especially a baby girl. What would I do with a baby girl? But this monk, he never protested. He never got angry and upset. All he said was, arsehole. So there he was left with a baby to look after. But, never allow just a lack of understanding or knowledge to stop you. You can innovate. And, you can actually see if it needs some food and get some milk from somewhere or whatever. So, he didn't do a bad job for someone who knows nothing about looking after babies. Innovate. Just like when I give any work to any of the monks here, don't think I can't do this. Give it a try. Who knows? It's just common sense. In fact, I remember this one monk, he did the tiling on the ablution block down below. And he used to tell me, he said, 99% of building is just common sense. That's how true that is. And how often is it builders don't have common sense and do stupid things. But anyway, 99% of building is common sense, and I'm sure that 99% of looking after a kid is common sense. Don't quote me on that, please. And so a week later, the mother was missing her kid desperately. As a mother would. Separation from your baby, that's just intolerable. So eventually she went to her father and confessed. It wasn't the monk. It was this scallywag boy who'd just gone off to the city and disappeared and left her just pregnant. And she never wanted to accuse him because at that time she still loved him. Now she came to her senses. And she felt so sad and sorry. She'd accused this bad monk, but she wanted her baby back. So for a third time, the whole village went up to the mountain. And this time they weren't accusing me. They said, I'm so sorry. They were banged 3 times asking forgiveness. What have we done to you? Please, we're so sorry. We accused you of something you never did. And what did he do when they found out he was in the right? Did he say, you shouldn't have done this to me, to a good monk. You should check your facts first of all. He didn't try and justify himself at all. He just gave the baby back and said, arsehole. And I was quite admired that. Because sometimes things happen to you and you don't deserve them. People just do stupid stuff. But what do? You don't get angry at them. You don't allow anything to trigger anger. People are stupid. People accuse you of things you didn't do. They left you with a baby to look after when that's the last thing you really need. And what do? You don't get angry at them. You just say, arsehole. So the next time anyone really winds you up, the next time they do something very, very stupid, the next time they call you just incredibly bad, stupid, really rude, crude, foul names, language you should never hear in a Buddhist monastery, what do you do afterwards? You just say, so. Okay, not the other word, which is quite close to it. Just the so, okay, no L-E on the end. Just do that, because what you're doing there is you're realizing you're not allowing the world to control you. You are content with being criticized for things you didn't do. You are content with just being given problems you don't deserve. You are content with the world, because this is what the world does. It's the way it is in this world. You can't control it. Even living with beautiful, good people, they will still upset you from time to time. And when they do upset you, you just say, so I expected that. I expected to be upset. I expected this monastery to be totally out of control. I expect people not to do the right thing. I expect people to do stupid things, like, what was it? Put in petrol into the two-stroke engine. Like, what are other stupid things we've done recently? There's many stupid things we've done. I've done my share of stupid things. What's the most stupid thing I've done? I don't know, but anyway, many stupid things. It's one of the great benefits of old age, 65 years of age. I can actually, it's not denial anymore, it's just old age, that you don't need to remember all the stupid things you've done in your life. Which is very, very helpful. But I'm sure there's many of them, many stupid things which I've done. And you don't need to worry about them because it's just part of life. You have this wonderful embracing, opening the door of your heart to the way of life, and instead just having contentment. But what happens to people, when somebody gives you a baby which you've got nothing to do with, and they accuse you of being the father when it's no way, you just look at it, nothing you can do about it, just accept it. And I use that just a lot I use that just when, they're accused of all those things for ordaining Venerable Hasapanya and her 3 friends, the bhikkhunis. They're accused of so many things you didn't do, but no way you could prove otherwise, so also. And just let it be. So that way, yes, people can say terrible things, but they can never take away your peace, your contentment, your happiness. Nothing can take away my peace, my contentment, my happiness. I don't allow that. The only way you can allow that is when you just do not understand the Dhamma. And you keep allowing this world to be something it's not. Or you keep hoping this world is something it's not. All suffering, and anger comes from suffering, just all wanting to do things come from suffering, all thinking comes from suffering. All suffering is asking from this world something it can never give you. Asking from the world what it can never give you. It can never give you nice speech. People will always be slacking you, even if you're the Buddha. They'll always be accusing you of things you didn't do, even like a great Zen monk. They'll always be giving you burdens which you don't deserve, like babies, to look after. That is the nature of this world. When you ask for things from this world, what it can't give you, that is called suffering. If you don't understand that, that will give you discontent, and discontent will make you start thinking and thinking and thinking. And our problem is we believe the thoughts rather than believe the Dhamma. The Dhamma is just so simple, just contentment. But instead of believing contentment, discontent starts thinking, and thinking starts all these arguments. And when you argue, especially if you're upset, you really convince yourself that the person who did that bad thing to you is evil, is bad, is stupid, and you convince yourself that they need to be told off, they need to be punished, they need to have this brought to their attention. It's important, you need to hear this. But that's just believing those thoughts. Years and years and years ago, when I was watching this in my mind, I compared it to like a trial in a law court. And my adversary, the person who really upset me, they were like the person accused in the court of law. And I was the prosecutor, the lawyer, who brings up all the worst examples, all the worst interpretations about why that person did that, and all their past indiscretions as well. The lawyer's job, the prosecuting lawyer's job, is to convince the judge that they are guilty. And I get all my evidence on why this bastard needs to be dealt with. And then I notice, this is what I do. When I get angry, I was having this prosecutor, and as soon as the prosecutor finished, any chance for a defense? No way. That was enough. He was guilty. Judge bangs the hammer down, guilty. And I never had any opportunity to see the other side of the story. When I saw that, that was unfair, unjust. It wasn't Dhamma. Just to judge a person straight away and get angry at them for what they did. I didn't know why they did it. So I learned and trained out of fairness, something which maybe in my background, English, fairness, justice, I could not really tolerate seeing myself being unfair to other people and judging them just by thinking about the bad side. So I forced myself. Yeah, I wanted to bang the hammer down and they're guilty and just slag them off for what they did to me. But I paused and waited for a defense. Find some extenuating circumstances. They were having a bad day. They are sick. They've got a migraine. That's not really what they meant. They misunderstood, whatever it was. Or maybe that's my karma, because I did that to the past to somebody else. Whatever it was, I used every argument I could think of to exonerate them, not to blame them. And you know, it wasn't that hard to do. Until after I saw the other side of the story, it was just impossible to get angry at people. They just said something bad to you. Oh, maybe I just misheard it. Or maybe they just had a really in a bad mood. They're going through a very difficult day today. That's why they're doing that. And when I did that, it's so easy for anger to disappear. Yeah, there was thinking causing anger, but I used thinking in the other way. Looking at the anything, any defense argument to exonerate them, get them off the hook, to see the other side, to try and excuse what I consider to be bad behaviour. I did that as much as I possibly could, and it always worked. So in the end, just, well, why you did that, arsehole. Could be guilty, could be innocent, but I am not going to slag you off. I am not going to get angry back at you. I'm not going to let you take away my peace and happiness. I'm going to be content. And I don't need to teach you. And even though I am the teacher in this monastery, even I don't do that. You teach yourself in this monastery. If you've done something wrong, it comes back to you. It's called karma. You learn from that. As a teacher, my job is to encourage you, to give you loving kindness, to build you up. You know when you do stuff wrong. You soon learn. You don't need me to tell you. My job is to be your supporter, your friend, not your sort of a tyrant. So anyway, that's actually how we overcome getting angry at other people. And don't ever think they deserve to be told. I need to tell them. No, you do not. They don't deserve to be told off. They will learn themselves. Your job is just to see the other side, to calm down the ill will, and also just to see through this thinking process, which always makes us do things and say things which we regret always afterwards. And it's one of the reasons why, to be able to have a nice calm day when you do absolutely nothing, you've got to start thinking about these things. As soon as I start thinking, I think of all the things I'm supposed to be doing, all my responsibilities, all the jobs, the emails, the letters. I'm supposed to do, actually, I just remembered, I'm supposed to do a book, an introduction to a cooking book for NBM. Oh, crikey, it was supposed to be in weeks ago. Anyway, never mind, I'll forget about it in a few minutes. Also. So, all these things you have to do. When you start thinking, it just goes on, and you have all this work to do. And that's not what I became a monk for. That's not what the range retreat is for. I work enough outside the range retreat. So also, as a person who's following a spiritual path, we have to learn how not to invest our actions and speech in our thinking. Because your thinking is untrustworthy. If that's why you can think and you can see just someone upsets you and you have this trial, this judgment, and it's really unfair. You look at yourself, and again, it's unfair judgment. You're just looking at an argument in thinking rather than feeling. It reminded me of a story which was actually, I think it was maybe in my first book, but I haven't told for years and years and years. It just came to my mind just a couple of days ago, just about the stupidity of thinking. And this was years and years ago when I was only about 18 or 19. Used to go on my vacations, just having a tent, going to the northwest of Scotland, really way up in the north of Scotland. And it was just beautiful in those days. You get a nice summer's day, which there were quite a few, July, August. And you're on the coast, along the cliffs. And one particular day, just no real destination, just walking slowly. You had a tent in the back. You can just sleep anywhere. I figured it all out, how to have enough food and survive in the wilderness. It was wilderness there. And you were just walking along there, just enjoying yourself on a beautiful summer's day. And the ocean was exquisite, lots of seabirds flying around the place, and just not too much wind, but enough wind to make a bit of a surf. And it was absolutely exquisite. And I was just enjoying the day, enjoying the sunshine. And it was only a single track road, hardly ever see a car, but I saw there was a car parked ahead of me. And, straight away, if I saw a car parked, I wondered what it was doing there, and I assumed that it too had seen, or the driver had seen just what a beautiful day it was, and had parked just to enjoy the view. But even though this was one of the most idyllic, exquisite, beautiful scenery I've probably ever seen, Scotland during most of the year is just terrible, just rainy, cold, blizzard, snow. But this day it was just like a heaven. And when I looked through the window of this car, there was a gentleman in there, this Scottish guy. He was reading a newspaper. Of all the days to read a newspaper, all the places to read a newspaper, now why can you do that in the evening time or just on a wet day? And just reading a newspaper, because the newspaper was not the small one, the broadsheets, very big newspapers, like the Australian here, not the West Australian. It was so big, he couldn't see the beautiful scenery. And there I had this idea. Had a pair of scissors in my bag. I thought, get the scissors out. Come on, get the scissors out. Be brave, Ajahn Brahm. And cut a hole in this newspaper. So you can see what's on the other side of his newspaper. Because what's on newspaper? It's all about the sport, Olympic Games, politics, wars, corruption, kakuru, games and comics and stuff. But what's on the other side of that? On the other side of all those words, which are mostly negative, was this beautiful, peaceful Scottish coastline. At its most brilliant. If you could only see that, what a waste of time all of that reading in the newspapers was. But of course, in those days, you've seen photos of me when I first came here. I was even skinnier then, as a poor, malnourished student. I was poor, and I was malnourished, just like Venerable Upasama was last week. But he's okay now, apparently. Just mental health issues. But I was malnourished. And this Scottish guy, he was big. And I knew I had no chance. There's no place to run. Just in the middle of nowhere. So I put my scissors away and just let him read his newspaper. And I just carried on looking at the beautiful scenery. But the simile was very powerful for me. And I remember that when I became a monk. To me, reading a newspaper was reading all these thoughts in my mind. And believing in them. And following them. And just letting them dominate just what I was doing and how I was thinking. And all my views and understanding, my wisdom, all coming from this newsprint of my mind called thinking. And I always remembered, if you can only punch a hole through all of that thinking and have some silence A mind which has not got a thought for just even a couple of minutes and see what's on the other side. And it's a great simile because that's what it's like. You punch a hole through the newspaper which you're constantly reading, your news, your tragedies, your problems, your plans, your horoscopes, your corruption, wars, scandals, gossip, all that stuff which goes on in your head. You punch a hole through that, see what's on the other side. And it's just so beautiful and peaceful, and just like just watching the scenery on a most delightful, exquisite coastline in the height of summer. Just peaceful, no one there. Just the birds, the ocean and you. Wonderful. And that's what it's like. You punch a hole through all that thinking which goes on in your head. And you're silent. What was I ever thinking for? What do I ever need? What do I want? So all those thinking makes you want, like the advertisements in the photograph. The latest Samsung 2017, the latest Apple, the latest app for your Apple, whatever it is. Now I'm going too far here because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think you get the point here. All these advertisements you see in these newspapers, they just create this desire and wanting, and they take away your peace. You punch through them. What's on the other side of that big advertisement? Peace, contentment, nothing there. Just a beautiful Scottish scenery. And I use that a lot. Punch through all of the thinking, and then I don't need to do anything. No wanting, just peace, sitting there. Don't need to get jhanas, don't need to get anything. Just contentment, just being here, not thinking, stopped, peaceful. Don't need anything, don't want anything, don't need to go anywhere, don't need to change anything. This is these wonderful days of contentment. Yeah, you don't achieve anything. All that achievement, I think it was Dhammasara, you sent me, was it Dhammasara or the nuns over at Jhana Grove? You sent me a little birthday card with a loony cartoon on it. Beautiful loony cartoon about someone racing past, looning I suppose it was, or Mr. Curly, racing past, quick, otherwise you'll miss it. And he says, how delightful to miss it. Hurry up or you won't achieve your goals. Wonderful. Faster or you'll miss it. Great. All about not following what other people are doing, but just learning how just to plod along. It's called the plodder. Even that's too fast for me, plodding along. Stopping is even better than plodding. So plodder, you get somewhere eventually. When you're still, you don't get anywhere. You stay where you are. And that is fantastic where you already are. You wouldn't believe just how brilliant where you already are actually is. You don't really realize, because you've taken this moment for granted, how incredible it is just to be in a beautiful monastery, just in your hut, just peaceful, nothing to do, nowhere to go, no burdens, no duties, nothing pressing on you. Real freedom. It's there at every moment. Freedom is there for the taking. Contentment. No one is pushing you. You can grab it and just be peaceful. But you have to push through those thoughts and not believe them. Those thoughts will carry you to the other side of the world and back. Always promising the grass on the other side, even though it's mouldy. Because it's on the other side, it must be better. Always taking you away. Always making you just come and go. When is the end of this coming and going? Always making you upset and angry. Always because we don't know how to stop these thoughts. See what happens when the thinking stops. How peaceful this moment can be. How little we need. And how the contentment is the path. Just being, watching the trees go. Everything you need, you have. You don't need anything more. But if you think you need to train yourself, to improve yourself, that's not contentment. That goes in the opposite direction to the Dhamma. Open the door of your heart to yourself. Be at peace with yourself. This is actually how you can actually get some contentment coming. And when you are content, you give yourself a moment of peace. You just realize just how stupidly you've scurried about. That was the first line in a poem, I think, in the front of my book. Give yourself a moment of peace and you realize how foolishly you've scurried about. Give yourself a moment of silence and you realize you've thought too much. Learn to be kind and you realize your judgment of others was always too unfair, too severe, I think it said. Learn to be kind and you always judge others too unfairly. People just do stupid things, but they're just trying to get there. They're just like you don't like to be judged, so don't judge other people. And then that's what kindness does to you. They can say all sorts of things, all sorts of bad things to you. Really get upset, say stupid words. Never mind, you must be in a bad mood. Remember that story? Some of you don't hear those stories. That's why you know the old story of the man who had the afternoon off work and he went to the market for eggs. You know that one, okay. But you all hopefully know that one. I've told it many, many times. I love telling that story because I can actually act it out with my words, but I won't do it this time. Just do it in very brief. Guy, afternoon off work, wife sent him to the market to get some eggs. And when he got some eggs, there's a young man at the market, just called him all sorts of really stupid, bad names, really got upset at him. He got really upset at this guy because he didn't even know me. He didn't do anything. Why are you saying such nasty words to me? He even said the F word to him. Fruit. Sorry. And the C word as well. Carrot. It's a really nasty words. And he just turned around, went home, came in the door, slammed the door. Wife said, "What? Got the eggs, darling?" "No, never send me to that stupid market. People are just so... They say terrible things to you over there. Don't even know them." And that's when she said, that guy, he had an accident. He hit his head. He's brain damaged. He's mentally unstable. He says that to everybody. So as soon as he realized the guy had a mental illness, he didn't get upset anymore. How can you get upset when somebody, who was really crazy because of an accident, got mentally disabled, says bad things to you? So she asked him to go back into the market, said the same things to him again, this crazy guy. It didn't matter this time. He bought the eggs, walked back, no problem at all. Never got angry at all, even though he was cursed and effed and fruited and carroted all through the market. Didn't really matter at all. Because the guy had hit his head. And the moral of that story is, if someone gets upset at you and starts to shout at you, upset at you, use terrible words to you, assume that they are mentally ill, that they've hit their head and they're brain damaged. Because it's true, anger is mental illness. It is a sign of brain damage. You've been damaged by your conditioning. It's not wise, it's not good health. So if someone says stupid things to you, just say, "Oh, poor thing. When did you hit your head? Was it this morning? When you got up?" But don't get angry at them. Just one person gets angry is enough. You don't need two people getting angry. Two people having brain damage, that's enough. So anyway, that's my story. I love that story because it just makes a nice little anecdote of why when someone gets upset at you, you just don't believe it. Just, they're brain damaged. It's not true. I'm not going to believe what you say. When you're in a bad mood like that, you must be sort of brain damaged. Something's gone wrong with you today. You must be sick. There's something wrong with you. So leave it alone. That way we can just say, so to anything. And which means that we can be at peace. We don't have to get caught up in our thoughts. We don't get angry at a person, angry at a place, angry at a situation. Which means we can be content. Content and easily satisfied, not proud and demanding in nature. Just peaceful here during this rains retreat. We can do some work afterwards, but now is the time just to be content. And don't try and achieve anything, for goodness sake. Just learn how to be content instead. And then you'll be a happy little monk and a happy little nun, and I'll be a happy little Ajahn because I won't have any work to do. Sadhu.